All right. So thanks for coming this afternoon. I'm going to try to briefly recap some of my experience leading up to becoming a freelance writer and author in the path towards becoming an entrepreneur. So in the 1990s, I worked in the mutual fund industry for about 10 years, doing account service, print production, and managing the traffic for a graphics department. And after 10 years, I got kind of burnt out in that field. And so two career paths that I was interested in exploring was cooking or writing. And I decided to pursue cooking first. Before I went to culinary school, I decided I would get some practical experience and see if I really wanted to do that type of work. So I landed a job at a hotel kitchen and then eventually moved to Le Fou Frog. Cooked there in the restaurant for a couple of years and did some catering. And decided it wasn't the life for me. I didn't want to have that lifestyle, and I started a little bit late in my early 30s versus when I should have started at 19. So instead of going to culinary school, I kind of reassessed and decided to pursue writing instead. So I applied to Emerson College in Boston for their graduate program and was accepted. So I moved there and studied writing and publishing there, completed my degree, and also started freelance writing in Boston. While I was there, I was also kind of keeping an eye on Kansas City. And I had this idea for a publication that I thought would be interesting that would cover local food, music, and arts. So I came back to Kansas City, and I took this idea and I developed it through the Kauffman Fast Track program because I wanted it to be more than just a creative hobby. I wanted it to be a business. So I fleshed the idea out and came up with a marketing plan. A couple years later, I launched Present Magazine. All the while, I've been doing freelance since I had left Emerson. With Present Magazine, it covered local food, music, and arts as an online-only magazine. And I did run it as a business for about 6 years, doing freelance on the side. Today, after doing Present for about 6 years, I decided to close it. I got kind of burned out doing that 24/7 and shifted to freelance writing, which I do full-time today. I focus on food, beverage, and business, and I write for several publications, including Feast, Thinking Bigger, Recommended Daily, and a couple of others. And I've published 2 books in the past 3 years, Casey Ale Trail and Last Bite. Now, Last Bite is a book that I published through the Kansas City Star. And in publishing these books, I created a physical product, which was kind of important to me. With freelance writing, you create something, but it was very temporary and transitional, and you only get paid per assignment. And I wanted to create something physical that I could sell and promote. So through the Kansas City Star book division, I published this cookbook that's based on a recipe column I did for Casey Star magazine over 3 years. Because the book division only had 1 employee, I took in a lot of additional roles as the author, the editor, the project manager, working with the designer and photographer to pull this thing together. And then once it was published, I also had to handle PR, set up events, and handle sales that I did directly at those events. Now with Casey Ale Trail, it's an idea that I came up with at the end of 2013 to publish a book about the local craft beer community and the breweries that were popping up. 2014 was the 25th anniversary of Free State Brewing and Boulevard Brewing, and I wanted to have a book that's a snapshot of that craft brewing scene. So I developed this idea on my own and then started doing the difficult research of visiting all the breweries, drinking a little bit of beer, and learning about these breweries and their stories. I worked with a designer once again to come up with a design for the book, did the writing and the editing, collaborated with a print broker using my print production experience from earlier in life, and came together with this really nice book. but the job wasn't done there. Again, as a self-published author, I had to set up events, do PR to try to get press, and then do the back-end things, set up retail sales. And what I've learned from these two projects, the two books, is that I not only have to market myself, but the product. And with each of the books, they focus on local businesses. With one, it was recipes from local restaurants and chefs. With the other, the book was focused on craft breweries. And so in marketing the book, I was really trying to serve the businesses and those particular communities and culture in Kansas City and the surrounding area. And indirectly, I was marketing myself as well. But I felt that it was more important to emphasize the businesses that I was representing in the books. That encouraged them to spread word of mouth about the books and build relationships. And it's kind of a community building effort. Again, different ways that I promoted each of the books through press, sending out press releases, arranging TV and radio appearances, doing events like beer pairing dinners or dinners where the book was part of the event package, bookstore signings, contacting local retail stores to set up wholesale or retail sales, and then setting up a website where people could order the book directly, and then social media. So, whoops. And so you wear a lot of hats when you're an author, whether you're self-published or otherwise. And I've learned some things along the way, from being a freelance writer, where you're just being paid per assignment, to an author where I have something physical to sell and has a little bit more shelf life. And with wearing those hats, you have the cycle of creating, producing, promoting the work, selling it, and then continuing that process along the way, building a platform and audience base with that, which is important to do today with each project or product that you do. The books help generate income, supplementing the freelance work that I do. I have a sense of accomplishment with having this physical thing that I created, and it also helps create opportunities for other projects down the road. Some of the challenges are that it's part of it's a labor of love. It's something that's a huge time investment to do, to wear lots of hats, and by doing all these different things, like the income that's generated, if you average that out, over a per hour basis, it's not as much income as you would like, but it's partly doing it because you love to do it, because there's the potential to grow, and it's also a quality of life thing. It's something that I love to do and that I've learned to be good at and want to continue improving. With wearing these different hats and playing these different roles, one of the things that I want to do is to try to figure out how to do fewer roles, and then focus on the things that I feel are more important, both the creation process and then the selling of the work, whether I do that directly or indirectly. I also would like to build my brand as an author and shift into new markets, to go beyond just local to regional or national audiences. So just to kind of recap, in the future I'd like to publish more books. I actually have a couple of opportunities on the horizon that I'm looking at to shift my work focus, so I'm doing fewer roles and doing more creation. And that's going to come with time, I think. As I hopefully get more successful, I can outsource some of those responsibilities. Perhaps develop speaking opportunities where, in addition to creating a physical product, I can speak and perhaps develop the income stream from that. Freelance-wise, project-wise, work with fewer clients, try to increase the amount of money that I'm doing, so that rather than volume, I'm doing more high-value projects. I would like to work on projects where I'm collaborating with others and doing more multimedia storytelling, whether that's through podcasts, video, or other means. So what can you do to help me? Some thoughts. Connect via social media, both directly to me, and I have pages set up on Facebook for both Casey Ale Trail and Last Bite. Share those, the website as well as the social media links. I'm open to ideas on how I can expand revenue streams. Of course, if you're interested, buy the books. Talk to local shops about stocking the books. If you know of a place around town that would be interested in carrying the book, you know, ask them about it. Future fundraising campaigns with the Casey Ale Trail, part of it was self-financed. I did pre-sales also to help generate income, and then some loans. With the books, if you do get your hands on them, patronize those local businesses that are in the books and let them know, just as a way to support the local community. And then if you know of any speaking opportunities that would make sense, then I'm all ears. So that's it. With Casey Ale Trail as well as Last Bite, they're available through my websites and then at select stores around town.
Great, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell me, now, will your next book be about Kansas City? Because you definitely get a loyal following when you pick such a niche. Or will you try to broaden the audience or broaden the subject matter in order to broaden your sales?
Sure. Well, I have two possibilities for book projects with two different publishers, and they're at this point they're just discussions, and so I need to write a book proposal for each, present it to the publisher. If it passes muster, then I'll sign a contract and pursue the books. They both happen to be related to either Kansas City or the surrounding area. I don't want to go into too much detail, but they were related to beer and alcoholic beverages, as it so happens. So both books would kind of build on the work that I've already done, but also expand to a slightly larger audience around the region. If neither of those come through, then I have some other ideas for locally oriented books, but you know, there's that opportunity cost of putting time and money into a project, and so I'm really biding my time to develop a book idea that would have that larger reach.
Great. Questions from the audience? Yes, Gary.
I'll always ask a question. You're right in my wheelhouse, bud. I've done 3 books, 3 movies, a book, documentaries, and trying to expand. I mean, it's all self-done, self-published, and to expand outside of Kansas City is the deal. Mm-hmm. And mine's a local thing. And the best I've been able to do is Twitter and Facebook, to find those other, mine is the local mafia, to find those other mob authors and organized crime writers who write true crime things, and then I retweet their things and repost their things, and they do mine, and it's helped quite a little bit. But the problem I have is people outside don't really want to come to me and buy it, but they will rent it on Amazon, or they'll buy it on Amazon. I used Create Space to get them all up on, or most of it up on Amazon, and that's what I've done. But it's you know, I've done all the talks and all that. It's just a constant struggle to get outside of Kansas City and keep an interest up in Kansas City. And so I developed an app to do a mob tour, and I also have done true crime podcasts now, which I can see that's starting to take off, especially the podcast, because people, you can start reaching outside of Kansas City with the podcast. You talked about doing that. I think that's a heck of an idea, and it's pretty easy to do. Sure. I got a guy that's got a studio that has a little internet radio show, and he's my co-host and keeps me on track, and it only costs Blueberry's like $12 a month if you put out about an hour and a half a month, and it goes to $20 or $25 a month. You get 250 megabytes every month you can put up. So that's what I've done, and you're on the right track. It's tough though. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next question.
Hi, Pete.
Hey, Christian.
So, Casey Ale Trail, it's a pretty cool book, and it's very well done. And this idea of trying to expand beyond Kansas City, have you thought about maybe pitching something to Boulevard up through their parent company, and that concentrates on Boulevard and then the parent company's holdings, and just because then that could become a book that gets spread worldwide, basically.
That is a good idea. I have, in researching this book, when I spoke with several people at Boulevard, including the founder, John McDonald, the master brewer, and then the head of the graphics, the creative department. I kind of put a bug in their ear about, at some point, I would love to do a book that covers the history of Boulevard, and that was even before it was purchased by the parent company. And that's something I would still very much like to do, because there's 25 years of history just with Boulevard. And I think that's something where I need to come up with a book proposal and really kind of flesh it out, and then come back to them with a vision of what it could be, and get their feedback. So I think there's potential for something like that. And they may have something in mind that they want to do as well, since they've hit that milestone, and they've got plenty of developments happening. But I think that I could have some success with a proposal, because they're in the brewing business. They're not in the writing or publishing business. And if they wanted to do a book, then they probably would work with a publisher to do it anyways. I think I could feasibly come up with a proposal, get the Boulevard on board, and then go to a publisher that would have the infrastructure to sell the book. It's just a matter of, do I want to put time into that, or the other things that are on my plate? So it's an excellent idea, though.
Any other questions for Pete? Okay, well then I have another question for you.
All right.
None of this is cheap. Self-publishing is not inexpensive. So I'm curious, what have you been doing to fund yourself through all of this?
Sure. So with, just to kind of compare, like with Last Bite, the cookbook, that was published through Kansas City Star. So they fronted the cost, and it was a print-on-demand book. So this gentleman mentioned Create Space, which is a division of Amazon, where you can basically upload a book that's designed and formatted properly, and have the book printed on demand, meaning it's made to order. And with the KC Star and Last Bite, we decided to go that route, because the Star didn't want to buy a print run of 2,500 books or however many and hold on to that inventory. It was more cost effective for them to go this print on demand route. So they fronted the cost for that, and then they also paid for the designer and the photographer. And while I didn't get an advance, I get a royalty based on the book sales. So I didn't have to really shell out any money for that project, other than my time, which has its value. With Casey Ale Trail, because of the quick timeline to produce and release this book, which was in less than a year, I had to do the self-publishing route because a traditional publisher is going to need a much longer timeline. I did pre-sales for probably about a month and a half before the book came out in December 2014, just to get awareness of the book out there, to generate whatever funds that I could online. Some of it was personal savings, and then also borrowing money to fund the other half of the expenses. A key part of it was I worked with a print broker to get the cost per unit of printing the book down to a really low level that made the whole project viable. So I'm fortunate enough to have that background in print production to know how I wanted it produced, to be a very high quality book, and what would make sense. And then the print broker was able to help negotiate a price point that made the project work.
So did you propose that idea to Kansas City Star? I mean, that's a really interesting way to get something done and not have to come up with a bunch of cash to do it. And so was this your idea, or did you come up with it together?
It was actually my idea. So I'd done this recipe column for 3 years that ran in the KC Star magazine, published in Sundays, and then it's one of those shower moments of, well, 3 years later, I've got 100 recipes that have been published in the paper. All the recipes are on file, the photos are on file. All we need to do is pull together a few other elements and make a book out of it. And I thought, if I don't do this, eventually someone at the Star is going to figure out that they can do it, and they'll do it without me. So I put together a quick proposal and met with the editor, and kind of laid it out. And he's a smart guy. I think he realized that they own all the rights to the material because it's printed in the Star. So they could have gone ahead and done it, but he's one person. It's a one-person department that has actually since been closed by the Star, and he has a bunch of other book projects. So he crunched some numbers and saw it was a viable opportunity, and that it would only cost a small amount for me to do some additional writing. I wrote bios for each of the chefs. We shot photographs, portraits of each of them, wrote an introduction, and I kind of managed the project so that this editor didn't have to. All the pieces kind of fell together. It was kind of a nice, easy gateway into publishing.
I don't want to hog the mic here, so if anybody has
Well, we probably should.
I guess we actually have. Oh, yeah, we're done, aren't we? Okay, sorry. I have more questions. We usually ask our last question is, what can we do for you? But you already made it very clear what we can do for you. Excuse me. I have a bad cold. Apologize. So I just wanted to thank you very, very much for coming and presenting for us today. It was a great presentation, and had a lot of insight into what you're doing and the types of things that you're doing. So thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Thanks.